some really common things I hear from my students. I hate phrasal verbs. I don't understand phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs don't make sense. I don't have phrasal verbs in my language. The list of phrasal verbs I have to learn is endless. Don't worry, you're not alone in this. Hi, I'm Izzy from English with Izzy, your trusted Cambridge English exam teacher and also advanced English exam teacher. And what we're going to be doing today is jumping deep into the world of advanced phrasal verbs. Now, if you're watching this video, it's probably because you already know that phrasal verbs are key to sounding natural in English. Advanced speakers use them all the time. Native speakers use them without thinking, which I know is really frustrating if you're sitting there and learning them at home. But what makes them really important? Well, unfortunately, they are one of the keys to sounding really natural in English. And by learning more and more phrasal verbs, you're going to get closer to a level of English where you're understanding almost everything that people say, and you'll be able to express yourself at a much higher level. But I don't want to scare you away. I know phrasal verbs can be difficult. I know a lot of the time the verb and the preposition have absolutely nothing to do with the meaning of the phrase, but you're here. We're going to learn 10 more together, and if you can, at the end of the video, write some examples in the comments section because practice makes improvement. The more you practice, the more you'll see results, and the more easily you will use these expressions when it's your turn to speak English. Let's dive right in. So the first phrasal verb we're going to look at is to brush up on. If you brush up on something, it means you're reviewing or you're refreshing your knowledge or your skill, which is something that you did in the past. Maybe it's an activity, maybe it's a sport, maybe it's a hobby, but you haven't done it for a while, so you want to practice it again today. Think of if you have, for example, a silver platter in your house, right? It may be beautiful, but you might want to polish it, or you might want to use a brush to remove a layer of dust or to remove some of the dirt that's on top. So you're practicing something again so you can get good at it like you were in the past. For example, when I was at school, I studied French, but I haven't studied it since I was 14 or 15. So I would really like to brush up on my French. My sister learnt Spanish at school, but then she stopped taking Spanish lessons for a few years as well. Last year, she went on holiday to Spain and she decided to brush up on her Spanish before she went on holiday. Lots of my English students like to brush up on advanced grammar 1 or 2 days before the exam instead of studying in depth for a long period of time before taking the exam. Now, this is your first chance to practice your phrasal verb. I'd like you to write in the comments something that you would like to brush up on or something that you are brushing up on because you haven't done it for a while. Let's see you guys put that English into practice. Now, the second phrasal verb today is to bring about, which means to cause or to make something happen. It's the reason for a particular situation or the reason for a particular change. For example, sometimes new government policies bring about positive changes in healthcare, or her hard work and dedication brought about fantastic results in her Cambridge English exam. If you're writing an essay about technology, about the development of technology, you might say, technology has brought about huge improvements or advances in communication. Pop that one in your notebook. Phrasal verb number 3 is to cut back on. Now, this one might be a bit easy to remember because cut means to break or to reduce. To cut back on something generally means to reduce the amount you are using or to reduce the consumption of something. So as a result, you'll see this phrasal verb being used a lot when we're talking about health, because people want to cut back on sugar, for example, or cut back on their consumption of sugar. I was going to say I need to cut back on caffeine, but I'm not trying to reduce my consumption. So my example would be I'm not trying to cut back on coffee, although lots of people will tell me that I probably should cut back on coffee. But it means to consume something at a moderated level and not at an exaggerated level like maybe you're doing now. So when people decide to be healthy or they want to lose weight, for example, generally they cut back on unhealthy or sugary foods. But you don't just have to use it to talk about food, you can use it to talk about electricity, for example. So if you're writing an essay about the environment or global warming, you could say that cutting back on electricity or our consumption of electricity is fundamental if we want to see a stop to global warming. Phrasal verb number 4 is to set aside. And we usually use this phrasal verb when we talk about preserving or keeping something for a particular use. Normally we use it to talk about time or money that you're keeping for something in particular or something special. For example, I have decided to set aside 100 euros every month so that at the end of the year I have some savings and I can go on holiday. Or people who have businesses, people who are self-employed need to set aside money every year so that when they pay their taxes, they have money to pay forward. If we're talking about time, we might say, I've decided to set aside 30 minutes every day to do some yoga. So it's the same as saying to dedicate or to allocate. Phrasal verb number 5 is to look into something. Now, if you look into something, you're investigating or examining a situation more closely to get more information. So for example, if somebody has stolen something from you, if there's a theft, the police might look into it. Or maybe a school is looking into ways to improve the performance of their students, to investigate or to examine the situation, right? If you're writing an essay in your exam, you might say that you have looked into the pros and cons of the situation, and after examining, you have looked into the pros and cons of a situation and made your decision based on the facts. Can you give me an example of something that needs looking into? Maybe people are not examining it or not investigating it closely, and it could do with an analysis. Remember, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, I'm here to correct you. So make the most of the comments and practice this phrasal verb. Phrasal verb number 6 is to put off. Now this one is especially important because it's something that all of us do unless you're extremely disciplined and have great time management skills. Now if you put something off, you're postponing it or delaying it. So something that is supposed to happen now or soon is going to happen later in the future. Sometimes it's because something has occurred and you can't do it. Oftentimes it's because we are lazy or we haven't found the time to do something now. For example, I give my students a week to do their homework and they tend to put it off until the last day. Or here's an example related to exercise because I've started going to the gym. I've made a decision to go to the gym 5 times a week, but I always put it off until the end of the day because I just can't find the motivation to do it early in the morning. I postpone it. I do it, but I leave it until later, right? But sometimes the phrasal verb put off is also used when we're talking about events where the time has been moved or made later. So things like weddings, gathering with friends, meetings at work, for example. Your boss might put off a meeting until later. Maybe you decided to change the date of your wedding and you're putting it off instead of doing it when you expected to do it. Confession time. I'd like you guys to let me know in the comments one thing that you have been putting off. I know we all have that one thing, so maybe seeing that other people are also putting off things will make you realize that it's a normal thing that we're all doing. Phrasal verb number 7 is to turn up. Now, turn up has a few different meanings. It can be to increase, like to increase the volume. You can turn up the volume of the radio. You can turn up the brightness of the lights, for example. But at a more advanced level, to turn up means to appear or to arrive, usually unexpectedly. So instead of saying my student arrived to class, I might say she turned up halfway through the class. I didn't expect her to come because she was late, but she turned up. Sometimes students who have taken my course will turn up 6 months later and tell me that they passed, and that makes me feel really happy. Say you're writing a restaurant review in your Cambridge B2 First or C1 Advanced exam. Maybe you're writing a bad review about a restaurant that you went to. Maybe the waiter or the waitress disappeared and turned up 20 minutes later. By using the phrasal verb turned up and not saying arrived, we're adding that extra meaning of you didn't expect them to because of the situation, right? Phrasal verb number 8 is to go over something. If you go over something, it means you review or you examine it thoroughly or in detail. So I always tell my students, when you're doing a piece of homework, please go over it before you give it to me, meaning read it again or analyze it before you send it to me via email. At the end of my speaking classes every week, we go over the vocabulary that I taught my students in class, meaning we review it and I give them a quick test. We don't just move on to the next topic. Perhaps you're going to give a presentation at work, in your English class, but you want to give your presentation in a prepared way. You don't want to be nervous. So maybe before the presentation or maybe the day before, you go over your presentation or you go over your notes. That way you are more prepared for the big day. The second to last or the penultimate phrasal verb is to take on. You take something on or take on something. And it normally means to accept or to undertake more responsibility or a task, sometimes a challenge. So most of the time it's implied that you're going to be doing more work or you're going to have more responsibility over something. So for example, imagine you play a team sport and your coach has offered you the position of team leader. Maybe you have the time to take on that role, or maybe you don't have the time or energy to take on that role, so you let someone else have it. Maybe your boss at work will offer you a new project and you take it on because you want to work your socks off and show your boss that you are capable and you can do lots of hard work. Or maybe you're getting married and you need a little bit of help with the wedding. Maybe you're looking for a wedding planner or for a maid of honor who can take on the responsibility of planning or organizing the wedding. Because it's a lot of responsibility to take on. So if someone else can take it on, that would be a huge weight off your shoulders, right? And last but not least, our 10th phrasal verb today is to run out of something. Now we use the phrasal verb to run out of when you had a supply of something or something that you have is becoming depleted or exhausted, or basically you have almost nothing left. You're using almost all of it and left with nothing. So for example, if you eat all the food in your fridge and you don't buy any more, you can say, I ran out of, meaning I used all of, I ran out of food. Once I had a toilet paper emergency at home. I didn't buy any toilet paper. I used the last roll. So I said I ran out of toilet paper. I don't know why I'm smiling. It was not a fun situation. I had to use a bidet. I had never used a bidet because we don't have bidets in England. But I learned how to use a bidet the day we ran out of toilet paper. Last week, I also ran out of coffee at home, which was tragic because, as you probably know already, if you've watched the video too of mine, I am a huge coffee fanatic. So if I run out, I don't feel very happy. But we don't just use this to talk about physical things. You can run out of time, you can run out of energy, you can run out of motivation, meaning you used it all and now you don't have any more left. Confession time number 2 today. I'd like you guys to let me know something that you have run out of in the comments, and that way I can reply to your comment, correct your English if there are many mistakes, and if not, well, it was a perfect opportunity for you to practice your English. All right, guys, we've gone through 10 advanced phrasal verbs today, and the ones we've gone through today are phrasal verbs which are particularly common in the C1 advanced exam. This means that they might come up in the listening audios, you might see them in the reading papers, they might ask you about them in the use of English activities. But if they don't, you can still use them in the speaking and writing exams. Because by using phrasal verbs, you're showing examiners that you have good knowledge of advanced English, right? Especially if you're using informal phrasal verbs in informal situations, or using some of the more formal ones in your formal writing tasks. Not only does it look really impressive, but it helps you to communicate on a higher level. Now, if you're watching this video about advanced English, you know better than anyone that practice makes improvement. I'm not going to say practice makes perfect because I don't think perfection exists and I don't think it's something that you should aim for. We all make mistakes. We're human. Even I make mistakes in English when I'm speaking English. It's normal. It's natural. But the more you practice, the more you will see that you are able to use these words in everyday English. And how can you practice these? Just like I said in one of my last videos, the first thing you should do is go out and buy an English notebook. You can divide this into sections. You can have a section for phrasal verbs. You can have a section for exam preparation. You can have a section for adjectives. But take note of new words, because if you just read them and think, that's interesting, you might remember it for an hour, but after that, you're very likely to forget it. So take note, write their definitions, write some examples of the phrasal verb, your own examples, and then review those words next week. Review them a month after, and that way you'll really get those words to stick into your long-term memory. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you and I'm not going to keep rambling on, but I do want to remind you, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like this video. And if you'd like to be the first to know when I release a new video every Monday, just hit that notification button and you'll receive a little bing every time I release a new video. But the most important thing I want you to do is to comment using one of these phrasal verbs. I'm going to be looking at the comments, I'm going to be replying to you guys, and most importantly, correcting them. And I know that you brave and motivated English students are going to write those comments. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Stay curious, stay learning.